WHGE 95.3 FM. Coming up, the Open Eye.
Those of us that indulge in or commit intellectual violence don't do so for the pleasure of mental masturbation or ego diddling. We do so because the chains of oppression on our people's minds are deep and difficult to remove.
Good morning, my children of the sun. Welcome to the Open Eye on WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm your host, Third Eye Optometrist Patrice Gibbs, here to get your third eye open. That's where, pay attention. I got a lot for you today. All right. Every generation has its purpose. Ours is to reveal the truth and reverse the brainwashing. All right. And let me get my disclaimer out the way, and we will just go on with the show.
The views and opinions expressed on Open Eye are those of the hosts, guests, and contributors. They do not reflect the policy or position of WHGE 95.3 FM nor our sponsor, the Delaware Center for Homeless Vets. Any content provided by Open Eye's hosts, guests, or contributors are theirs and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, company, or individual.
All right. Here we go. Let's get started with the Open Eye. All right. We're going to start with some history, as I always do. Have you ever heard of Abraham Hannibal? Okay. Few lives in history are as extraordinary as that of Abraham Hannibal, the African boy who rose from enslavement to become one of Russia's most brilliant military minds and the ancestor of its greatest poet. Born around 1696 in northern Abyssinia, present-day Ethiopia, Hannibal was only 8 when he was torn from his family, sold into slavery in Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, and eventually presented as a gift to Tsar Peter the Great. The boy's quick intelligence and striking character won the Tsar's affection. In 1707, Peter personally sponsored his baptism with Queen Christina of Poland as his godmother, and made him his own godson. Ibrahim's given name was rendered Abraham, angelicized in Russian, and during a reunion with his father, a local chieftain, he learned that his family name was Hannibal, descended from the legendary Carthaginian general. Recognizing the boy's rare talents, Peter sent Hannibal to Paris in 1717 to master mathematics and engineering. His exotic appearance captivated the ladies at the court of the Duke of Orleans, who even tried to bribe Hannibal to remain in France. Yet he stayed loyal to Russia. When war erupted between France and Spain, he interrupted his studies to serve in the French army, where he was wounded in the head before returning to Russia with a formidable education and library. Back in St. Petersburg, Hannibal rose swiftly through the ranks of engineers and became mathematics tutor to the crown prince. But after Peter's death in 1725, court intrigue turned against him. Rivals exiled him to Siberia and plotted his arrest. For years he lived in obscurity until Peter's daughter, Empress Elizabeth, ascended the throne. Remembering her father's loyal protege, she restored Hannibal to honor, wealth, and estates, worked by thousands of serfs. Though he tried to retire quietly, his skills proved indispensable. Hannibal designed canals, negotiated borders with Sweden, and oversaw fortifications. Elizabeth named him general-in-chief and awarded him the Order of St. Alexander Nevsky, one of Russia's highest honors. He lived to see the reign of Catherine the Great and finally retired to his estates, dying wealthy and respected. His personal life was as dramatic as his career. His first marriage was to a Greek woman that ended in scandal when she bore a child that was not his. Later, he married Christina Shabaka, a Livonian noblewoman with whom he had 11 children. His son carried on his legacy. Ivan became a celebrated admiral and fortress builder. Osip, a major in the artillery, and Joseph, a naval commander who married into the aristocratic Pushkin family. From this union came Alexander Pushkin, Russia's national poet, who immortalized his great-grandfather's astonishing journey in literature. Thus, the kidnapped Abyssinian child who became a Russian general also became the root of Russia's greatest literary genius, a living testament to resilience, brilliance, and the unpredictable tides of history. Abraham Hannibal. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. Hey, boy, I see you there, bro. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye, moving right along. Okay. Have you ever heard of the Bronx slave market? It was not an actual auction block of chains and shackles, but during the Great Depression, it came to symbolize another kind of bondage: economic desperation and racial exploitation. The Depression brought unemployment, foreclosure, hunger, and despair to millions. For African Americans, these hardships were magnified by the daily weight of racism. For African American women, the burden was tripled as sexism piled on top of racism and poverty. For many, the Bronx slave market became a grim last resort where it happened. The most notorious sites were the corners of Jerome Avenue and Simpson Avenue in the Bronx, in New York City. These were predominantly white upper middle class neighborhoods with a significant Jewish middle class population. Before the Depression, many black women had worked as full-time domestics. Others found jobs in factories or assembly lines, and some stayed at home with their families. But when the economy collapsed, stable work dried up. Desperate, women gathered each morning between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m., rain, snow, or shine, waiting for wealthy white housewives to hire them for a few hours or a day's labor. Wages were brutally low, averaging just 15 to 30 cents an hour. The jobs were grueling, scrubbing floors on hands and knees, washing windows, doing laundry, cleaning bathrooms, ironing linens, waxing floors, or washing babies' clothes. On Jewish holidays, demand rose, and women were sometimes hired to meet the additional household needs, often expecting to follow kosher laws, using different cloths and tools for separate dishes and utensils. The exploitation was relentless. Dishonest employers withheld wages, cut agreed upon pay, or even turned back the household clocks to squeeze out more work for less money. Kinder employers might pay car fare and allow lunch break, but even that was rare. And there was another darker reality. Sometimes men, now housewives, came to these corners. They were not looking for help with housework. Instead, they preyed on women's desperation, offering money for sexual services. Many black women trapped by poverty had to endure both physical labor and sexual exploitation. Hunger sharpened the cruelty of the system. Some women starving accepted any wage, no matter how low, just to secure a meal for the day. This undercut others who held the line for fairer wages, fueling resentment and tension within the community of women. It was survival, but at a cost. Exploitation bred division. Despite the desperation, many women fought back with dignity and determination. They organized a small but powerful form of collective bargaining, a mini union. Together they set a wage floor, no less than 20 cents an hour for regular work and 35 cents during the holiday season when demand was highest. It was a fragile but courageous act of resistance against exploitation, an assertion of the worth and the system designed to grind them down. The Bronx slave market was never an ideal or a just solution. It was a humiliating necessity born of racism, sexism, and economic collapse. But it stands as a testimony to the survival and resilience of African American women. Even when pushed to the margins, they found ways to resist exploitation, support one another, and carve out dignity in the face of systemic cruelty. The Bronx slave market. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. Hey, Sherry, I see you, sister. All right. WHGE 95.3 FM. Third Eye optometrist Patrice Gibbs here. Okay. Speaking of black women. All right. We pause today to honor the life of Assata Shakur, revolutionary, activist, author, and unyielding soldier in the struggle for black liberation. She has joined the ancestors at the age of 78. Born Joanne Deborah Chesimard, Assata rose as a fearless leader with the Black Panther Party and the Black Liberation Army. She stood tall against racism, state violence, and oppression in America. Her brilliance and courage made her both a target of repression and a living symbol of freedom. After escaping prison in 1979, she found political asylum in Cuba, where she lived since 1984. Continuing her mission through teaching, writing, and inspiring generations worldwide. Her autobiography became a manifesto for liberation, carrying her immortal words. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. To the U.S. government, she was an enemy, branded a terrorist. But to the oppressed, she was and remains a beacon of hope. Asada proved that a black woman could defy empire, survive exile, and still speak truth with dignity and power. Her legacy lives in every chant for justice, in every young freedom fighter who refuses to bow down. The struggle continues because of the path she walked. Rest in power, Assata Shakur. Your spirit lives on in all of us. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. You know, it's something what people study. I look at people, of course, study the Bible and what have you, and that leads them to study the Hebrew language, which is really interesting because, you know, they're studying the Hebrew language because they want to speak the language that Christ spoke, that Jesus spoke, you know, Yeshua, whatever you want to recognize him as. The thing is, he spoke Aramaic. They told you Hebrew was an ancient, unbroken language. They told you it was the tongue of prophets, carried intact for thousands of years. That's not history. That's a narrative. Modern Hebrew, as we know it, wasn't revived. It was manufactured. In the late 1800s, Russian Zionists moved to Palestine, built a new language for a new political project. They took mostly Arabic words, wrapped them in a Yiddish-style alphabet and syntax, and called it Hebrew. That's a zoo experiment, not a miracle. And the myths go deeper. The so-called Phoenician script, Solomon's temple, the kingdom of Judah, layers of religious fiction used to blur the line between history and story. Go check the archives for yourself. I'm going to take my word for it. In the Library of Congress, you'll find the oldest Hebrew manuscripts written in Arabic script. You'll see Yiddish and Arabic intertwined. You'll see that for centuries, most Jews in the Middle East spoke Arabic, not Hebrew. So when you hear this is the ancient language of the Bible, know this. You're not hearing history. You're hearing a myth crafted to serve power. Why I bring that up? I'm going to tell you. And I'm not going to tippy-toe around none of this. I'm going to say it plain and clear. I stand with people who are crushed by occupation, dispossession, relentless state violence. If some foreign army marched into your city, stole your home, killed your neighbors, and made your children sleep in fear, you would resist. So would I. That's not a crime. That's human instinct. That's survival. Don't let the moral scoreboard be flipped by broadcast anchors and pundits who measure suffering by which flag is flying on the cable network. When the state uses tanks, bombs, checkpoints, and laws to erase a people's rights, when homes are razed, when families are buried in rubble, when hospitals and schools are targeted, we must call that what it is: an atrocity in the name of security. And we must call out the global hypocrisies that let powerful governments get away with this. Make no mistake, insisting on human rights for some and silence for others is not balance. It is cowardice. It is moral bankruptcy. You cannot demand peace while ignoring the system that makes the fight inevitable. You cannot demand that the oppressed accept permanent second-class status and then pretend outrage when they resist. Look at history. Excuse me. From South Africa's apartheid to other anti-colonial struggles, sometimes the only way the world woke up was when people refused to be erased. But love me or hate me, I believe in a different future. I believe peace is possible. Not through domination, not through terror, not through the slow violence of displacement and humiliation, but through equality and liberation. Real peace requires the dismantling of policies and ideologies that say one person's rights matter more than another's. It requires reparations of justice, not just speeches. It requires accountability. Courts, sanctions, prosecutions when civilians are targeted, truth when lies have been told for decades. That is the work of justice. That is the path to end the cycles of violence. So don't confuse solidarity with silence. Don't confuse compassion with weakness. If you are listening call your rep, support organizations delivering medical relief, pressure institutions that fund or enable state violence. Educate yourself and others. Read the history. Learn the treaties, question the euphemisms. March, donate, use your voice to demand equal human rights for all people, no exceptions. We can make history look different this time. We can refuse to accept dispossession as destiny. We can insist that human dignity is not negotiable. That's what I stand for. Fierce, unapologetic, unrelenting in my demand that every life matter and that every atrocity be named and held to account. Stop waiting for permission. Stand, act, be loud, be righteous, be consistent, because peace born of justice is the only peace worth having. And we won't get it by looking away or being complacent. You know, I don't understand the relationship between America and Israel. It is the most twisted, upside-down dynamic on the planet. America is like the world's most pathetic sugar daddy, shoveling billions of dollars to a government that turns around and turns their ass up for us to kiss. We're not helping, we're enabling. America handed them $30 billion to bomb children. And somehow that's still not enough. At least when you pay for a service, you know what you're getting. Do you feel me? But this, This is America volunteering for a public humiliation kink under the banner of foreign policy. America is literally arresting American students on American soil for protesting Israeli war crimes. What kind of democracy does that? The hell is that? The whole thing is like a bad drug habit. You pay for the poison and then beat your own kids when they call it what it is. And in Washington, both parties compete for Israel's affection like it's a twisted talent show. Republicans rail against handouts. Democrats profess their love of human rights, except when the victims are Palestinians. Both sides. This is a state of delusion, and the entire political class is hooked in it. Look at the media. Has anything changed? It's like Groundhog Day. The same questions, the same evasions, the same lies, and the same man at the podium, a human pinball machine with only one answer on repeat. Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. Damn, even flat earthers are more interested. At least they try to be creative. Don't be silly. Nobody believes you. You're lying. And the whole world sees it. In today's global discourse, there exists a peculiar immunity. Few nations are held as sacred and beyond reproach as Israel. And few people as shielded from criticism as Jews when Israel is the subject. The moment anyone dares to question Israeli policy or challenge its actions, the accusation comes swiftly: anti-Semite. With that single word, debate is shut down, reputations are destroyed, and the world is expected to stand in obedient silence. This tactic leans heavily on historical tragedy, the Holocaust, an unspeakable crime in which millions of Jews were slaughtered under Nazi tyranny. It's constantly invoked as the unassailable reason Israel must never be criticized. But how long is the world expected to accept this shield against accountability? How long will the suffering of the past be used to justify the crimes of the present? Israel today stands among the foremost violators of human rights in the modern world. Its military occupation, its system of segregation, its treatment of Palestinians, and its disdain for international law put it in company with the most oppressive regimes history has ever known. From bombings of civilian neighborhoods to the open-air prison that is Gaza. Israel's policies have consistently dehumanized entire populations. It is also a nation steeped in xenophobia. Consider the words of its own leaders who have demanded the expulsion of African refugees, arguing that their very presence threatens the Jewish character of the state. Darkness of skin in this ideology becomes a stain. This is not simply about refugees or migration. It is about politics of racial purity, a chilling echo of the very doctrines Jews once suffered under. You have a loss of memory. And here lies the bitter irony. And people who endured unspeakable horrors, ghettos, death camps, state-sponsored hatred, now preside over policies that inflict suffering, displacement, and humiliation on others. To forget one's own oppression while replicating its methods is more than hypocrisy. It is a betrayal of history itself. If Israel cannot remember the lessons of its own Holocaust, why should the world be expected to forever center that tragedy as though it erases all present crimes? Memory loses its moral force when it becomes a weapon of manipulation rather than a call to justice. The truth is simple. No nation, no people, no government is above accountability. To insist otherwise is to normalize oppression, to sanctify injustice, and to mock the very memory of those who perished in the Holocaust. The world must stop playing this game of silence and submission. To criticize Israel's crimes is not to deny Jewish suffering of the past. It is to affirm a universal principle that oppression, wherever it occurs and whoever commits it, must be condemned. This is the Open Eye, WHGE 95.3 FM. WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm Patrice Gibbs on Open Eye. Okay, a few weeks ago, well, feel like this. The noise around Charlie Kirk is deafening. It's not just the random trolls online. Major outlets still push the myth of a brave truth teller. He wasn't. He was a professional political operative. The vision was the product, not dialogue. That proved me wrong table, not a forum, a content factory, camera scripts, rehearsed answers. His opponents were 19-year-olds on their way to class. That's like a heavyweight boxer picking fights with random gym goers. The outcome was rigged. He used a corrupt, Socratic method. Leading questions, bait and switch premises, rapid fire interruptions. Ask a simple question, what is a woman? Then twist any answer into a gotcha moment. Hours of footage cut down to seconds. Nuance deleted. Humiliation uploaded. A spectacle designed to validate prejudice, make opponents look ridiculous, and feed an audience hungry for facts and logic. That's not debate, that's performance. Real debate requires humility, risk, the possibility you might be wrong. Kirk's format removed that by design. And the damage spreads. He spawned imitators. Politics becomes a stage to own the other side. Democracy corrodes. Students leave thinking engagement is dangerous, thinking conversation is futile. His assassination, a horrific escalation of political violence with no place in democracy. But remember, his tactics, while not violent, were a form of intellectual violence, turning fellow citizens into props instead of partners. If we want a healthier political culture, we have to stop rewarding the spectacle. Bring back real debate. Listen. Risk being changed. Leave with more understanding than you started with. Anything less, it's just content. That's all. And like I said, it spawns imitators. Why it matters that Tennessee State students ran those MAGA clowns off their campus. This story isn't just about Tennessee State. It's about every black space that's been invaded, surveilled, underfunded, or undermined. HBCU students are built different. They don't show up thinking if I argue well enough, I'll be heard. They already know the game. Setups, traps, camera edits. They've watched white supremacists like Charlie Kirk turn college sidewalks into viral content farms. Liberal destroyed. Cliff's designed to humiliate students and delegitimize higher ed. But at Tennessee, the script flipped. MAGA imitators rolled in with red hats, DEI bashing posters, and live stream cameras. They thought they'd get an easy spectacle. Instead, Tennessee State University students saw it for what it was. Provocation, not dialogue. And they shut it down. Phones up, signs out, campus police call, intruders escorted off. No soundbite, no content, no free propaganda. That matters. Because these road shows aren't harmless debate. They're a con dressed up as conversation. The goal is to debate students, clip the footage, and feed a right-wing pipeline that says colleges are broken and liberal indoctrination factors. Those clips become ammo for defunding, gutting DEI, and demonizing higher education itself. HBCUs know this history. Schools were built brick by brick because white institutions tried to keep us out. Or failing that, tried to control us from within. When agitators walk onto a black campus today, it's the same old colonial impulse. We can invade even your sanctuary. Tennessee State students answered with clarity. Not here. Not today. And that's the blueprint. If every black community meets intrusion with that kind of discipline, no props, no bait, no spectacle, the culture war machine loses one of its favorite weapons. So yes, running them off campus was symbolic, historical, prophetic. In an era of rising authoritarianism, fear is the point. Fear makes people small. Tennessee State students refuse to shrink. They reminded America, we are not your content, we are not your props, and you will not colonize our campuses. Get the hell out of our spaces. The HBCUs were born in fire. Many of them are standing in power. They didn't build HBCUs because America wanted us educated. They built them because America wanted us locked out. They built them because the law once said it was a crime for us to read, a crime for us to write, a crime for us to know ourselves. But still we learned. Still we built. Still we refused to bow. HBCUs rose like fortresses against ignorance. They were the ark in the flood of Jim Crow. They were safe houses when every other door was locked. They were classrooms, yes, but they were also sanctuaries, training grounds, launch pads where people America swore would never rise. And rise we did. Did you see the receipts? HBCUs are responsible for 75% of black PhDs, 46% of black business executives, 50% of black engineers, 80% of black federal judges, 85% of black doctors, 50% of black attorneys, 75% of black military officers, 40% of black dentists, 50% of pharmacists, 75% of veterinarians. Numbers don't lie, but they don't tell the whole story, because every number is a life. Every percentage is a family lifted. Every statistic a chain broken. HBCUs are not just schools. They're movements, they're monuments, they're living proof that when people are told no, we will write our own yes. Without HBCUs, black America would have been locked out of the future. With HBCUs, we are the future. And we're not done yet. Now, let's talk about one of the oldest tricks in America's book. Blame shifting. How is it that a white man kills a white man and somehow, some way the headlines, the hashtags, the laws, and the outrage end up pointed at black people? How the hell that happened? You've seen it. We've all seen it. A tragedy unfolds between white folks, but before the dust settles, the news pivots. Urban crime, black violence, community unrest. Suddenly, what should be a straightforward case of accountability turns into another excuse to surveil our neighborhoods, demonize our children, and tighten the screws of a system that already sits heavy on our backs. That is not by accident. This is a tactic. It's a centuries-old reflex in this country. Scapegoat black folks to shield white guilt and white power. The act happens elsewhere. The punishment lands here. From Reconstruction to the war on drugs, from immigration panics to economic crashes, blame gets rerouted to the black community while the real culprits escape. I'm here to tell you, we see the pattern. We're not confused. We're not fooled. We're not going to be the punching bag for a system that refuses to look at itself. It got us effed up. So the next time you see that headline, hear that pundit, watch that policy move, remember this. Ask yourself, who did what to whom? And why the blame is being shifted. Because once you name the trick, you take its power. This is the open eye. We see what you're doing, and we're not blinking. WHGE 95.3 FM. 1948. The Democratic Party finally puts civil rights on its platform. And the South exploded. A block of white Southern Democrats stormed out of the National Convention. Why? Because they refused to stand with a party that backed desegregation, anti-lynching laws, and voting rights for black Americans. They called themselves the Dixiecrats. The polite name was States' Rights Democratic Party. Translation: we want the right to oppress black people without federal interference. The hell that was. Led by South Carolina Governor Strom Thurmond, they built a platform dedicated to one thing only: protecting Jim Crow. And they weren't fringe either. In 1948, they carried four states that chose racism over democracy. And after they lost, they didn't disappear. They bled back into national politics, switching jerseys from blue to red. By 1964, most Dixiecrats had become Republicans, engineering the Southern strategy, voter suppression, and anti-civil rights policy that echoed for decades. Since then, no Democratic president has won a majority of white votes. That walkout in 1948 wasn't a principled protest, it was a political temper tantrum to preserve white supremacy. And unfortunately, the Dixiecrats didn't die. They just switched parties, changed tactics, and sanitized their language. So ask yourself, how much of their playbook is still in use today? Yeah. Are you paying attention? Are you paying attention? Understand the meaning of words. Antifa means anti-fascism. Fascism is the boot on your neck. It's fear, violence, one-man rule, and blind obedience. Communism under dictatorships. Same boot, different color, both crush dissent, both silence the people, both demand total control. Communism is not the opposite of fascism. Democracy is the exact opposite. It's power in the hands of the people. It's free speech, free press, free votes. It's checks and balances. It's the right to tell any leader you're fired without getting thrown in jail for it. So don't get fooled by false choices. When fascism rises, the answer isn't trading one dictatorship for another. The answer is a living, breathing, fighting democracy. And you want to get some, it's a cartoon I saw where the so-called founding fathers, when they were writing the Constitution, said, you think we should put something in here just in case the people get stupid and elect ass? Maybe they should have. Or you wouldn't get stuff like, there's the stuff that went on at the United Nations. During disaster turned his sights on China's wind turbines, mocking them as useless. They're a joke. They don't work. They're too expensive. They're not strong enough to fire up the factories that you need to make your country great. The wind doesn't blow. Is that some of the dumbest mess you ever heard? These are the same stupid people that feed into this, that thinks you don't have solar energy when it gets dark. China, the global wind power superpower. Far from barely using wind turbines, China is the undisputed leader in wind energy. By 2023, China accounted for over 40% of the world's installed wind power capacity. In 2024 alone, the country installed 72% of all new wind power worldwide. No other nation comes close. Wind is not a side project in China. It is central to their energy strategy and industrial policy. China doesn't just build wind farms, it builds the turbines that power them. The country has become the largest manufacturer of wind turbines on Earth, exploiting its technology and infrastructure around the globe. While Trump rides wind power as a joke, China is profiting from it, scaling its economy, and cementing its leadership in clean technology. Trump's rhetoric is designed to ridicule and distract. But facts matter. The wind does blow in China, and it powers factories, cities, and futures. While he sneers, China builds. While he mocks, China leads. And while he clings to fossil fuel nostalgia, China is securing dominance in the next global energy revolution. The lesson is clear. Dismissing renewable energy is not just ignorance, it's surrender. WHGE 95.3 FM. Patrice Gibbs here on Open Eye. Just in case you're keeping track, the cracks in U.S. influence are widening. South Korea is pulling back. After an ICE raid at Hyundai's Georgia plant that detained Korean workers, Seoul is reconsidering its investment posture. What had once been projected as billions flowing to U.S. projects is now under threat, especially as Korean leadership argues that extracting massive capital without safeguards could invite a financial calamity akin to their 1997 crisis. Qatar is rethinking its bets. The reported $1.5 trillion U.S. deal in response to Trump's cooperation with Israel in targeting Palestinian envoys in Doha, has become a warning sign. Strategic partners won't tolerate betrayal or chaos without redirecting their capital elsewhere. Denmark just snubbed U.S. weapons. Opting for the Franco-Italian SAMP-T system over the U.S. Patriot, Denmark committed $9.1 billion to European arms. Danish officials cited higher costs and longer delivery times of the Patriot system as decisive. China is punishing U.S. farmers. This year, China has nearly halted purchases of American soybeans, a breach of dependence that pushed U.S. farmers toward the brink. Once, China bought over $13.2 billion in U.S. soybeans, amounting for more than half of U.S. soybean exports. But retaliatory tariffs have throttled the flow. The result? massive surpluses, plunging prices, and farms teetering on insolvency. Trump's tariff policies are crushing the U.S. industry. The 25% tariffs on auto parts and 50% on steel and aluminum have blistered the manufacturing base. Ford, for instance, reportedly lost $800 million in QT, wiping out its profits entirely. This is in line with broader reporting on the pain tariffs inflict on heavy industry. In short, the orange disaster was right in one sense. He triggered one of the greatest economic turnarounds in American history in 6 months. It's not accelerating, it's in decline, not renewal. Pay attention. How is this happening? How can one corrupt corporation wearing the mask of a presidency walk in and collapse the entire rule-based order of the United States in just 6 months? It's from Matthew Cook. How can they defy Congress, gut public services we voted for, and redirect hundreds of billions of our dollars to bankroll a bounty-hunting army rifling through private tax records, hunting non-white families, kidnapping people at courthouses, torturing refugees and tourists, all while backing a genocide in Palestine and the mass starvation of children? How is that happening? We're told it was about taxes, about coming the right way, about Christian values, about law and order. But look closely, it's none of that. It's about power without principle, barbarism dressed in suits. And still, the cops don't stop it, the courts don't stop it. Mayors, governors, Congress, the media, they gossip, posture, shrug. Aren't there safeguards, checks and balances, a firewall against ethnic cleansing in 2025? No, there never have been. Not in so-called Western civilization. But there's truths. Nations are imaginary lines. Cities are real. Streets are real. People are real. Children are real. And they're counting on us. In 2025, with the technology we've created and the interdependence we can't escape, survival depends on cooperation, not obedience to cults of power. We owe it to every city, every street, every child to stand up. Because they're all our children. In history, we remember whether we fought back. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. Hey, Rhonda, I see you there. All right. WHGE 95.3 FM. This is the Open Eye. Something we need to understand is our influence. African Americans don't fully grasp the depth of our influence. We underestimate the reach of our creativity, the magnitude of our power. When we create, the world imitates. What we innovate, the world adopts. Our culture is not a side note. It is the rhythm, the language, the attitude, the soul of world culture. Think about it. When we birthed jazz in New Orleans, the world wanted to play jazz. From Paris cafes to Tokyo concert halls, jazz became the universal language of sophistication and rebellion. When we created rhythm and blues, the world tuned in, translated it, and made it their own. Yet it was always rooted in us. Then came hip-hop, born in the Bronx, nurtured in the streets. And now hip-hop is not just music. It's a global economy, a style, a way of life, from London to Lagos, from Seoul to Sao Paulo. Hip-hop is the lingua franca of youth culture. That's not coincidence, that's power. Fashion follows our swagger. Slang follows our tongues. The way we walk, the way we style our hair, the way we turn pain into poetry and struggle into rhythm, it reverberates across oceans. World culture doesn't just glance at us, it studies us, copies us, lives through us. And yet, too often we fail to see what this means. It means we hold an unmatched power of influence, the ability to set trends, shift paradigms, and reshape global imagination. It means when we speak, the world listens. When we move, the world follows. That's more than popularity. That's cultural supremacy. That's the blueprint of power. And until we learn to recognize, harness, and protect it, the world will keep profiting from what we create while we remain disconnected from the wealth of our cultural generations. World culture is African American culture. That's the truth. That's the power. The only question left is what will we do with it? What will we do with it? Our declaration. We, the scattered children of Africa, stand at a turning point in history. The African Union has declared all people of African descent around the world as part of Africa's 6th region. That's more than a statement. That's an invitation to power, to purpose, to destiny. Our reality. We are not minorities. We are a global African majority. Our families in the Caribbean, South America, Europe, and North America are one people. Our culture moves markets. Our dollars shape economies. Our voices change nations. Excuse me. But disconnected, distracted, and divided, we have been weakened. Our moment. Across the continent, Africans are building. They're building networks of trade, platforms of technology, schools of science and innovation, youth programs, business partnerships, and international alliances, all designed to reconnect us. Not just to our roots, but to political power, economic opportunity, and global influence. Our responsibility. This revolution will succeed only if we in the United States and throughout the diaspora rise to meet it. If Africa rises, we rise. If we invest in Africa, we invest in ourselves. Our mandate. Support African businesses. Build bridges of trade, not chains of dependence. Send their children on exchange programs to learn, to lead, to build. Reclaim our genealogy and identity. Demand our governments respect our dual identity as African citizens and global Africans. Our benefits. A stronger Africa is stronger bargaining chip for Black America. A connected diaspora means we are no longer beggars at a global table. We are partners in global trade. Our children will grow up knowing they did not come from nothing, but from kingdoms. The African Union is not calling us to leave our homes. It's calling us to unite across oceans. We've been scattered for 400 years. The pieces are coming back together. This is our call. Will we answer? Or will we let another chance at freedom and power slip by? Our truth. Unity is the key. When we unite as one people, no nation, no president, no system can ever deny us again. I'm Patrice Gibbs. This is The Open Eye. WHGE 95.3 FM. Yeah, it's something. I always tell people, don't take my word for it. Anything I tell you, you can find out. You can research and find out for yourself. And some things you may not be able to find out. And there was a question I was asked not too long ago. Where did I obtain my knowledge of self? I'll tell you my credentials. I do not carry my knowledge of self as a certificate or a borrowed badge. I carry it in my blood. It is a handed down flame, 5 generations deep, passed down from hand to hand, mouth to mouth, altar to schoolroom, and parade ground. This is not a theory I read about. It is a lineage I belong to. My great-grandfather was a Garveyite. He didn't merely admire the ideal of return and self-determination. He acted on it. He was the man who registered and filed the paperwork for the Universal Negro Improvement Association's Black Star Shipping Company. That paper was not a bureaucratic footnote. It was a declaration of intent. We would move, trade, transport, and carry ourselves with dignity on the world's waters. From him, I inherited a sense that politics, commerce, and self-respect are one and the same thing. My grandmother knew the Nation of Islam before Malcolm Little ever went to jail. She heard the currents before they made headlines. She recognized the language of self-worth being taught in the mosque and knew how that language could reshape a people's soul. Her faith was a practical faith, a faith in discipline, self-repair, and the reclaiming of history. My mother was a Black nationalist and Pan-Africanist before most people could even pronounce the terms. She taught me that geography is not only a map you read, but a web of kinship you inherit. She taught me to read history sideways. How the politics of a port in Liverpool or a mine in Katanga touched the daily life of my family 3 generations later. She taught me that love of self and love of the continent are not separate virtues but twin responsibilities. I was named Patrice. Patrice Lumumba to carry that stubborn, luminous lineage. Names matter. A name is a destiny, blunt instrument, a memory hammered into the future. Lumumba's courage, his refusal to barter his nation's resources for foreign favor, his insistence that independence meant control over one's own destiny. That is the lesson my name hands me every morning. I was schooled on the work of Anta Diop, Drusilla Dungy Houston, and John Henrik Clark. These were not optional readings. They were textbooks of survival. From Diop, I learned the sciences of Africa as evidence of African genius. From Drusilla Dungy Houston, I learned the buried histories of our women and our kingdoms. From John Henry Clark, I learned to treat history as a weapon for liberation, to prod the lie from the bone and restore the truth. I have stood on the banks of the Nile, have been raised up in the craft at the Temple of Karnak in Luxor, Egypt. Those stones speak in a registered history textbooks sometimes ignore. The speech of continuity. To stand there is to be cut by time, to know that the human story of intellect, ceremony, and governance in Africa is not recent discovery, but the foundation upon which every modern claim to civilization rests. So where did I obtain knowledge of self? In kitchens, in classrooms, in docks, in mosques, in sanctuaries, in church, in living rooms that doubled as lecture halls. In the slow teaching of my elders, in the raw truth of rivers and ruins. It is inherited, studied, wrestled with, and practiced. It was given to me as a responsibility, not a comfort. And now, like those that came before me, I am the vessel, the steward. The knowledge is not mine to hoard. It is mine to pass on, sharpen, and arm with purpose. That is the true credential. A life lived in accord with the lessons and the courage to demand that the world learn them too. Yeah. Her mom's revolutionary. Patrice Lumumba assassinated January 17, 1961. The Congo's first prime minister, gone, but not forgotten. 2 months later, March 29, 1961, my mother pushed me into this world and named me Patrice. Not by accident, not because it sounded pretty, not because it rolled easy off the tongue, but because it carried weight. Because it meant history, because it meant I was already enlisted in the Army of Liberation. Jane Gibbs, black nationalist, Pan-Africanist, Garveyite blood in her veins. She didn't raise no bystander. She raised a revolutionary. Here, son, read this. That was her favorite command, so I did. By first grade, I could already read and write. But more than that, I could tell you who Lumumba was, why he died, and why his name still lived in mine. By 15, I walked with Baldwin. I danced with Zora. I sang with Langston. I argued with Garvey. I mourned Du Bois. I prayed with Malcolm. I flipped through Shakespeare, fought through Steinbeck, laughed with Twain, studied mythologies from Egypt to Greece, and held in my hands the wisdom of Cheikh Anta Diop. My father called me the militant midget. He thought it was a joke. But Mom knew. Mom claimed it. Mom said, that fire, that sharp tongue, that fight, that's me, that's mine. That's the son I raised. And she was right. Because Jane Gibbs had one mission, one purpose, one holy assignment, to raise a son who would not bend, would not break, would not bow. She raised me, Patrice Frederick Gibbs, to be what she always intended. Her love, her legacy, her revolution. This is the Open Eye. WHGE 95.3 FM. All right. Well, coming to the close here, y'all. Time flies, like I always say. I hope you learned something, because I learned something before I got here. And I said, don't take my word for it. Look it up. And as we always tell you, destiny determines who enters your life, but you decide who stays. Therefore, value those who value you, and don't treat those as a priority who treat you as an option. This has been Open Eye on WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm Patrice Gibbs. All right. Thank you, Rhonda. And as I always tell you, global African supremacy. Africa is working to open the door. Let's go home. I'm Patrice Gibbs. Peace.